So, we are now just wrapping up the trainings of the mind of the what they call the small scope, or the initial motivation within the Lamrim Chenmo. So the book that we have been going through is called Lamrim Chenmo. It's the stages of the path to enlightenment. And it literally is the opportunity to train at every level on the path to obtain enlightenment. It's got it all. And so our initial orientation has been what they call the small scope, or the initial motivation, and the trainings on the mind for that. The idea in this particular type of training is that as you receive a teaching, that you spend some time meditating on it, that we take some time to reflect upon it, that we go into the teaching that we've learned and do what's called an analytical meditation. We really call it the mind, and there's specific points of each lesson. So we've covered what we call sort of these preliminary practices of suffering, we look at impermanence and karma, and as we looked at that and gone through this cyclic existence, we start to see the rare and precious opportunity that we have in this human life to really remove suffering. So each one leads to a realization, and having sustained a wish to remove suffering, we enter into the first initial motivation. And there we really look at the initial scope is, how do I use this life to continue having a good life, to continue when this body ends, a good rebirth, a path that's going to continue on, that's beneficial. And at the same time, I can actually meet some of my mental afflictions here and resolve them, deal with them, so I could improve the quality of this life and set up a foundation for next one. And so the two primary trainings there have been developing refuge, something you can rely upon, and ethics. Ethics, essentially. It'll say conviction of cause and effects, karma. And, if we really start to understand how what we think, say, and do leaves an imprint. Everything we think, say, or do leaves an imprint. What we water grows. If certain habits and tendencies are very strong in us, right? And the more we water them, the stronger they get. So in this sense, there's some unwholesome activities. That's a word that is often used. And really within Buddhism, they're not saying good and bad. They're not saying right and wrong. They're not saying good and evil. They're saying, well, if you do this, it tends to create suffering. And the definition of virtuous and non-virtuous is any action that leads to a beneficial outcome, it's going to be virtuous. Any thing that you do that leads to an unpleasant outcome is going to be non-virtuous. And that really becomes the definition. Are we watering seeds that create more suffering in our lives, or are we watering seeds that actually lead to a removal of suffering and even some pleasant experiences? So then we often will just call it good karma, bad karma. But really it's much more about potentials. Potentials. We have lots of potentials. We already have within ourselves the incredible potentials of enlightenment. We already have all these qualities. They're here. And we can water them. And we can stop watering the weeds. And so that's the idea, is let's stop watering the weeds and let's start watering the things in our life that we know to be meaningful. And so we looked at the top 10 list of activities that tend to create a lot of problems, called the 10 non-virtuous activities. And then the 10 virtuous activities, the ones that actually create these wonderful potentials and water those in our lives. And so that is really, if we are at this initial motivation, and I think that's where a lot of people are, is really, if we're here, we're probably thinking that there's something more meaningful in my life than watching American Idol. I'm just guessing. Could be. I know a lot of people are, there's a big show that just is
Mad Men.
Yeah, thank you, Mad Men, right? And Some friend of mine posted that he just doesn't see how he can live without them. But there's more to life than these daily things that we get caught up in, and there's an unsatisfiedness that's happened here, an unsatisfactoriness. And so this is the initial scope that says, hey, what's meaningful in life? What is it? Is it necessary for me to be really constantly desirous of things and trying to avoid other things and have an up and down of emotions in life and get really happy when I get good stuff and really sad when I lose it? Is this really what it's all about, or is there something more? And that's generally what brings people to a spiritual path, which is, hey, there's something more. So this initial scope is, well, taking refuge in something that is deeper than this own physical body, something I can rely upon, something I can depend upon, a path. And the ultimate refuge, we call, is really the jewel of Dharma. There's 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. But the Dharma jewel is the highest one. It's the ultimate truth. It's the nature of things. So if we can't rely upon the nature of things, well, then we're in some trouble, because Dharma is not just the teachings of the Buddha. There's Buddha Dharma, right? But Dharma is the realizations that we get, and ultimately Dharma becomes the ultimate truth and the nature of things. It's that which liberates. The Buddha taught Dharma so you can be liberated. The Sangha helps provide that community of support, but ultimately, if you go into any Tibetan monastery, you will see the images, the altars of the Buddha and Sangha, and images of Sangha, and you'll see the Dharma text highest. They're always highest on an altar. That's where they keep them, because that's what liberates. And this Dharmic path that we're on is really about seeing truth. Ultimately, everything in Buddhism is to see things as they are, to really see truth. And that's what liberates us. So in this initial scope, if we start having something that we can rely upon, some teachings and a path, and that we again, it's not blind faith. We've tested it. I'll try this for a little bit, and we'll see if it works. And we cultivate something we can rely upon. We start then really setting the groundwork for removing suffering in this life and providing the next one, which is good, virtuous activities, and stop doing the unhealthy things that create so much suffering. So that's where we are. And I think most people are there. And now we really lay the foundation for the next step, which is the initial, from the initial to the intermediate scope. And here, the aspiration is not merely to feel better in this life, have a good next life. It's to be liberated from all of this. It is to have no more suffering. It is nirvana. So the middle scope is to be liberated from all of these karmic and mental afflictions in our life, and to not have to be born again and again. It's not about a good next life. It's about, I don't have to have any of these anymore. I can be liberated. I can stop creating the causes to be blown around like a feather in the wind, by my karma and what life and what's happening and causes and conditions. And so this aspiration's really quite special. And in order to have this aspiration, we have to first see what is it in this life that we are seeking to avoid. We're not going to obtain enlightenment if we just embrace the conditional life that we already have. It's not going to work very well, because we're taking refuge in the real nice things, right? The jacuzzis. It's my latest dessert for the day. Nothing's popping up. That's interesting. Okay, so, but in these daily mundane activities that we get just so caught up in, and we ultimately need to cultivate renunciation. And renunciation here is a strong, visceral, almost disgust, it's described, with this worldly conditional existence that we live in. It's strong. And for it to be strong, we really have to see the limits of this life, and we have to see just how little it offers and how painful it truly is. Now, whenever we enter into this talk, it can be the depressing talk, right? I hear so many people often say, well, Buddhists, man, they just say this is all suffering and they're downers. And so rather than use the word suffering, which is often the word, the truth of suffering, and I'm going to talk about 6 types of suffering. We want to understand suffering in its truest context, which is that the conditioned existence we live in is never going to be satisfactory. It's always going to create some pain. There's no way to avoid it. Anything in your life that gives you joy is also the seeds of your suffering. It's just the way it is. There's nothing out there, and yet we will constantly grasp and grab onto and try to make things better for us in this life, only to be unsatisfied, only to have this body come and go, relationships come and go, jobs come and go, just, the food that I don't want to get too into that yet. And so we want to enter in this not with the idea of being depressed, melancholy. It's the idea of starting to see things accurately and starting to see that this is not going to meet my needs. And this is really not where I want to put my energy. It's not the rewarding experience that we dream it up to be. So it's a sobering, clear look at reality. And rather than being melancholy, it's actually quite liberating. It's not, how terrible and awful this stuff is. It's understanding that, this is terrible and awful, and I don't have to deal with it. Renunciation doesn't mean I don't enjoy a nice cup of coffee. It means I renounce the delusion that this nice cup of coffee is the source of any lasting happiness. And it's a very different thing. And renunciation, it says, it just brings us to what is really important in my life. We have X amount of hours in a day. How do I want to spend my day? If I spend almost most of my time out clubbing and watching Mad Men and doing these other things, and it might be very difficult to find the time to cultivate my mind and to make choices that are meaningful and water the seeds I really want to grow in life. Because I'm watering all the seeds that are temporary, impermanent, and unsatisfying ultimately. So what do you want to water? What do you want to direct your attention to? Where do you want to spend your time and energy? That's really renunciations. Renouncing the delusion. Renouncing the delusion that this outer phenomenal existence that we have is going to provide you any haven of lasting happiness. If we get that, then I'll tell you what, you can become a Buddhist. And it's so liberating. It's so incredible. And that is really technically the entry level of a Buddhist path is renunciation. When we've cultivated the understanding of the nature of phenomena and its limitations, and have a strong desire to be liberated and free from it, that's really the entry path. Then the next path is what they call the path of accumulation for enlightenment. It's the entry point. It's also the hardest thing to do. It's really hard to jump through that door. We could talk about it hypothetically, but I'll tell you, we take a lot of refuge in a lot of things, and we don't see its nature. So the only way to really get this sort of strong sense of commitment and effort that's required to achieve a path is we need to start paying attention to the limitations that's offered in our life. So it's called there's 8 types of suffering. We got lots of lists. And so initially, they talk about 8 types of suffering, which is really embodying things that we know. For example, in the Four Noble Truths, the suffering of birth, of illness, of death, of aging. These are things. Now, there's nothing rewarding about that, right? We're going to get old, we're going to get sick, we're going to die. There's no way around it. And sometimes, there's an alternative to aging. You might die, right? And there's this, so the first 4. And then And I don't want to spend a lot of time on these. I want to get these 6, because we got these 6, which are different than the 8, but they're sort of the same. Yeah, it's fun being in the Gaelic discipline here. So we debate and we talk about fine points. The other aspects of we've got aging, sickness, death, and birth, and then we're constantly coming in contact with unsatisfying things. We come in contact with things that are painful. We constantly come in contact with unpleasant circumstances, right? Have you met anybody in your life that didn't come in contact with unpleasant circumstances? No. Just they come. And then we're removed from pleasant circumstances, right? I really want this pleasant one, and it's gone. It lasts for a little while, it's gone. We wind up chasing those things. And so this cycle that we're in this conditioned existence just winds up creating a desire for this happiness that even if we get it for a moment, it comes and it goes. And there's, just by being human, just by being in this body, you have the conditions. You have all the conditions to get cancer, to get leukemia, to have your leg broken, to get mugged. I mean, this is what happens in our life. Happens everywhere. And we have this condition. Sometimes we really get the idea it won't happen to me. Or even more fascinating, that it shouldn't happen to me. Right? Because, if I eat right and exercise, I'm going to live a long time. Right? Yeah, it's a funny mind that we have. And that this is just the nature of life. And yet, when it happens to me, I'm shocked. And then I go into, it's not fair. Why me? Why not me? Just by being human, this is the nature of human conditions. And however bad we think, and it's a funny thing with the mind, we think we have all these problems, we have these mental sufferings, right? And it's quick how simple they can change. Right now, you might have some stress, some pressure, some worry in your life. And I'll just tell you a quick story. One of my students from Long Beach, really good young man. I taught in a poor minority school on the border of North Long Beach, Compton. So these kids really didn't have much, and I really had the good fortune of teaching there for a lot of years and staying in contact with these kids. And his daughter, 3 years old, fell out a 3-story window and brain damage, and thought she's going to die. The pictures of her in the hospital, hooked up to everything, and they had tracheotomy, and she can't. Anyway, she wound up living. She wound up making it, and he's got her out of the hospital and home now, and she can't feed herself, she can't walk, and takes care of her. And this is a young man who's 20. He's probably about 22, 23 now. He's got another kid, and quit his job, and so that he can get the government aid to actually have the medical care. And every day he's posting how grateful he is that she's alive, and she's home now. And he just posted one with some music playing and she bopping her head, and with their little thing here in the neck. And so as we hear about this, suddenly our problems shift, don't they? But a minute before hearing this, we might have thought we had problems. If we start to notice this, we're going to start to notice our mind. And our mind grasps and it latches on to things. But if we look at perspective and clarity, things shift in our mind, and our feelings shift with that as well. The key to understand this is that in this human condition, our kid can fall out a window. We can fall out a window. We can get hit by a car tomorrow. You could work out and exercise all you want. Be dead tomorrow. Right? That's truth. Our mind rarely goes there, though, right? Because we got plans. And those plans are unrealistically attached to a particular outcome that's going to give a particular result. But if we really look into the nature of things, we can take a little time and start observing, is this true? Is this true? And ultimately, we want to know what's true. So what they call the meditation on the unsatisfactory experiences. I'm using the vocabulary that is sort of technical language. So as we enter in this stage to develop this renunciation, is to start doing some very specific meditations on these 6 points of this unsatisfactory nature, and what this life actually offers us. And number one way that it is really creates suffering is there is no certainty in this lifetime. There's no certainty. Boy, we really try to get some though, don't we? We really try to get certainty. We really try to take care of things, to be prepared, good Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and create a job that's going to last. But when we look at it, there is in fact no certainty, as we mentioned, on our health. Right? You can exercise, eat right all you want, and you might get infected by somebody and have a different disease. That can happen. There's no certainty with our health whether we'll live tomorrow. There's no certainty how long we'll live. We can take steps, and I think it's prudent to exercise and eat right and do the things we can. But ultimately, it doesn't pan out. I remember. Well, I mean, there's lots of examples of that. Of very healthy people that die. Of very healthy people that contract diseases. Of these things that happen. But there's no certainty in our health. There's no certainty in our financial situation. Right? A lot of people had quite a bit of money and good jobs before our recession. And lost those jobs. Likewise, every job that we have today is really subject to a lot of conditions. Remember when gas shot up to over $4 a gallon? I mean, that just doubled our output. You know, now we're back to what, $2.50, I think, down in Glenwood. Our government opens and closes. I always use that one because that just fascinates me. You'd think our government could stay open. Just a fascinating one at some point, but it doesn't. So, I'm going to go through these sort of 4 specific types of ways of no certainty. So we have health, financial security, relationships. How's that one? No security there. Yeah. So, even if we're in a healthy relationship, even if we're in a nurturing one, at some point it's going to end, right? And even in the healthy ones that sometimes people grow apart, and even if we do our part to the best, we really just don't know how those things are going to go. Our friends will come and go. Our friends change. Relationships, not just the intimate ones, but our friends. Things change and go. There's no certainty there. We don't even know if they may die tomorrow. I may die tomorrow. There's no certainty in our relationships. There's even, you may have noticed that there's certain groups you've belonged to, certain friendships and communities, and you've outgrown them. You changed. They changed. Things change that way. So we have no certainty in our health. We have no certainty in our income. We have no certainty in our relationships. And the 4th point here is really just that the nature of existence itself is uncertain. Right? I mean, look at climate change. You know, look at just your own life, how many things have changed. And you change. The nature of existence is about this. So we want to take some time in this part of the path to really look at the fact that the conditioned existence we live in, the life that we experience, is not going to offer you that certainty. There's nothing out there that is guaranteed. Except, well, they have 3 marks of existence. One is that life's uncertain. Things change, right? And the other thing you can be certain of is you're not going to find anything that's satisfying. So I guess there's some certainty there, right? But ultimately not, because at that point you can become liberated from it. So, and the reason they have us bring this up is because we don't think about it that way. We just don't. And because we don't, we get pretty satisfied with what we got. The house, the jacuzzi, the person might. But eventually, you'll notice that those things become a source of suffering. And those things, you can have them all and still be miserable. Right? You can be sitting in your nice house, in your cool, comfortable bed, and be really sad and depressed. There's no certainty that we can really count on. And if we understand that, the real beauty of it is, well, I can learn to go with the flow more. Because if I understand that the nature of life is uncertain, I'm not shocked when my car doesn't start. Right? I'm not shocked because sometimes cars don't start. I'm not shocked when I break my leg because, people break legs. I'm not shocked when I find out I'm sick today, even though I had other plans. Because it's the nature of things. So here's where renunciation comes in. It's helping you to see clearly that, oh, yeah, right, I worked out a lot, still broke my leg. It happens. And there's a more of a freedom to that, to understanding that truth. But all too often, we're in a delusional aspect that just said, I'm just going to get the right house, right job, right car. It's all going to be good. I'm going to exercise, be healthy. I'm going to do that marathon next week. Well, it'd probably take more than a week, right? I could drive a marathon in a week. But, that's this conditioned mind. It just doesn't live in reality very well. And so here, if we just start taking a look at the drawbacks of a conditioned existence, that we're just subject to just so many causes and conditions. We're subject to, when you think about politicians and people that are making decisions for our life, how's that feel? Yeah. And so taking a little time to just see the nature of things without getting caught up and depressed. That's not the point of this. It's actually to empower yourselves with a desire that it doesn't have to be like this. There's the truth of suffering, there's the truth of the cause of suffering, and there's the cessation. This is about to say, hey, you know what? There's something better. There is a life with certainty. There is an experience of the nature reality that is not conditioned like this. So again, we don't want to bring this up, because people do. People start going this, they start getting really scared and depressed. And that's not what this is about. It actually empowers you to be more prepared when things don't go the way you had planned. Right? The second on the list, how are we doing for time? Oh yeah, we're good. Is no satisfaction. Just like the Rolling Stones. You just can't get no satisfaction, right? Pretty much from the moment we wake up, we are looking for pleasure, right? I'm looking to feel good. I'm looking for a good breakfast. I'm looking for, what to do today. I'm hoping the weather's all right. I'm constantly seeking for pleasure, and it's never satisfied. As soon as I get something that feels good, well, I'm going to try to hang on to that for a bit, and it's going to come and go, and then I'm going to look for the next thing. And then what else is going to make me feel good? And it's a fascinating phenomenon. Even within our mind, there's this, Robina Corton, the nun that we often have speaker, she calls it a neurotic sense of lacking. A neurotic sense of lacking. I need something to feel good. I need something to feel good. And not to understand that, you already have what you need. That nothing out there is really going to do it. We need to eat. We need to, be healthy and do things like that. But ultimately, those experiences that are really trying to find some pleasure, it's just a constant hunger and looking for something that's feeling good. And it's driving all the time. It's driving from the moment we wake up. And as you can see, our mind, like when I told the story about Anthony and his daughter, it shifts, doesn't it? Suddenly, I've become pretty grateful for what I have. A minute before, I'm pretty unsatisfied. Now I hear something else. Now I'm a little more satisfied. Now I'm more grateful. And the mind then, by the time we leave a Dharma talk, well, we're looking at what to do that's going to feel good, right? Looking for pleasure. And it's just not, it's a quench it's a thirst that doesn't get quenched. And it's always there. Not quite enough. Not quite enough. So we have a constant search for this pleasure, and we don't find any lasting pleasure in any sense pleasures. Whatever you eat, even if you get the meal just right, that pleasure is not going to last. And if you don't have the meal and you really wanted it, now I'm suffering. Or if I eat too much. Or I ate just the right amount and it was really delicious and I feel good. You know what my mind's doing? Well, when can I have that again? When can I have that again? Yeah, I want some of that. Already I'm not satisfied. I'm already thinking about when can I have this again? Hey, what's the recipe for that? I want that recipe. We're not going to be satisfied. Even when everything goes exactly right, we're satisfied for exactly how long? And then we're thinking, well, how am I going to keep this? And now I'm worried about losing it. There's nothing out here that's going to be satisfying in any lasting way. And even, they always talk about the sense pleasures so that's a technical point. There's nothing that's going to just keep those totally happy and well. And your favorite song can get old, You eat your favorite meal every day. That'll get old. The beautiful views. Well, that one's pretty hard, right? I mean, that can change, though. Because we can't look at it all the time, and it gets dark, and you can't see the mountain. But the sense pleasures of sight, of sound, of those things, not going to last. And then when we're away from that view, oh man, I know a lot of people that suffer when they're away from Carbondale. They're in LA. Man, I don't know how people live in LA, right? I'm from LA, so I can live there, but there's a lot of suffering when you're away from this. So we start to, I also use the example a lot of times of, a really nice bed, right? You get a really nice bed. It's the perfect one for your back. It sets your spine just right. And then when you travel, you can't sleep because you're not in that bed. We just can't find satisfaction. It doesn't last out there. And then, even if we get everything just so, you know what happens? Somebody invents a better phone. And then, this is so not going to work for me. And, the latest computer, whatever things are. And then, so it's a hedonic treadmill, right? Stimulus and certain pleasure. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And then there's no satisfaction in attachments. As a matter of fact, attachments become the root of suffering, right? Attachments. Man, if we get rid of attachments, you will find inner peace. Attachment, the Robina Corton has that really wonderful talk that she gives on love and attachment. And she says, love can't hurt. Love never hurts. Love is a really giving thing. Attachment hurts. Attachment hurts. Desire. I want something. I'm missing something. I need something. And that I can't be happy without something. And that's just a recipe for disaster. And a lot of pain. So, in our conditioned existence, there's no certainty. There's no satisfaction. We're in this cycle. And then this one's a fun point. You're going to have to give up your body again and again. You're going to have to abandon your body. That's not fun. Dying's not typically very fun. And this body will come and go. There's just no way around that. This body, physically, whether you believe in an afterlife or not, whether you're Buddhist and think about consciousness or not, this body's going to end. And that's not fun. If you prepare for death properly, it can be an inspiring experience. But from a Buddhist point of view, they really look at, you're going to have to go through this process again and again and again and again and again. And you may be in various forms. From a Buddhist point of view, you could be an animal, you can be a human, you can be in heaven, you can be in these sort of hellish realms of just pain and suffering, and you can be sort of hungry ghosts. And coming to an end becomes a painful experience. As a human, there's a lot of fear and insecurity generally. We can cultivate the consciousness to do that well, but generally we don't. Most people are not there, and it's a suffering time. And then our friends suffer, and animals don't look like they're having too much fun when it's over. So we have to abandon this body again and again. And by our karma, karmically speaking, we take rebirth again and again and again. So the idea of the person of intermediate scope is I want to be free of all this. I don't want karma ruling my life. I don't want my mental afflictions compelling me to do things and creating delusion. I want to be free of karma and not have to be reborn again and again and experience this conditioned existence. The real root cause that is driving me again and again is this grasping to this self in a very particular way. And based on how we live our life, it gives rise to a new life. And that life may be pleasant, it may be unpleasant, but any life in conditioned existence is going to have all of these things. It's still going to have uncertainty, it's still going to have no satisfaction. And it might be even in heaven realms. So they say if you're born in heaven realms, very pleasant. When you're drinking water, it's like radiant nectar. It's all good. But even that comes to an end. And then when that comes to an end, there's a lot of suffering. And we're back to uncertainty. We're back to lack of satisfaction. And then the only way to, if you're in a heaven realm and your body ends, well, there's only one way to go when that karma's up. And so the next life is going to be one of a lower rebirth. It's we burned up good karma. So whether we even buy into that or not, depending on where we are on the path, because again, Buddhism doesn't say, believe this. It says, if we're at the initial scope, we're at the initial scope looking at how my anger creates problems in my life and looking at my skillful actions creating some beneficial activities and how I can really lay a foundation to have continued good life now and into my next lives, and then entering here. So, but it does present this whole path that you may find to be true or you may not. But here's one that says, changing status repeatedly from exalted to humble. Now, you don't have to go to high rebirth to low rebirth for that. In your own life, how many times have you been well respected and then thought somebody thinks you're an idiot? We go from exalted to humble all the time, depending on who we're talking to and what situation. What job I used to have, and now I have this job, and now I don't feel so good. And what room I'm in. We go from exalted to humble all the time. And our level of feeling about ourselves changes frequently. Sometimes I really think I have it together, and other days I think I don't know a thing. Sometimes I feel pretty good about myself, and other days I'm like wondering, why I'm here, right? So we have this in our daily existence, and it happens all the time. We've had all those times. We graduated college and university, and then later, we're the intern, the lowest on the rung, and we've achieved all this, and now we're like, this. And it just depends on the situation you're in, too. I've had the opportunity to, I grew up in Southern California, and, the fascinating thing for me is people working in the media industry and in movies and stuff. And to see the suffering there, because they go from exalted to humble quickly. What have you done lately? You were so hot 2 years ago. And worse yet, the people who were child actors, they were once somebody, and they spend the rest of their life reminding people of that. It's pretty sad. But we do it on regular levels, right? Just going from one room to the next sometimes at a party. With my friends walk over here, and now I'm insecure and with some other groups. And so this conditioned existence has that quite frequently. And then the real fun one essentially being alone and having no friends. And what they're saying here is that all the people we have in our life, the good friends that we develop, the intimate relationships we have, the support that we develop, in the end, they're not going to be there with you when you go. And they're not going to be there when you're born again. In the end, it's all about you. And you will constantly lose people in your life. It's kind of a depressing thought. But in the end, it's all about you. And there is no one that's coming with you. And there's no one that can take away your pain. And there's no one that can really create the joy in your life except you. And again, this doesn't have to be a depressing thing. It can be the empowering thing. Because then you're not dependent upon others to create the meaningful life. So, as we enter into this stage of the path, they really, I didn't bring the text out here, they have some pretty graphic little proverbs that just point out that, there's no way to cultivate renunciation unless we really look deeply at the limitations of this life. And they're going to use much stronger words. I'm pretty gentle, and that there's just nothing here to grab onto. There's nothing here to spend. And so if we take some time and look at it, it's not the idea that it leads to a sadness or depression. And you can feel that in here. This kind of sucks. But it's an inspiration to see, wow, I have been chasing something that isn't working. It's never going to work. And I don't have to keep playing that game. I don't have to keep looking for happiness in all the wrong places. And I can start putting my time and energy in something I can depend upon. That's where renunciation starts. Renunciation is the delusion that any of this stuff is going to provide any certainty, any satisfaction, any stability. That it's out there, that I'm missing something. And renunciation is renouncing that delusion and saying, hey, I can put my time and energy into something that is lasting and meaningful and is no longer subject to my mental afflictions and karma and the conditions of everybody else. And it is the entry point to a Buddhist path. But it doesn't, as you can tell, it doesn't come easy, right? Because, still looking for the massage later. But it doesn't mean you can't enjoy a massage either. That's the other thing. A lot of people take renunciation and they think that it's, well, you have to go eat one bowl of rice, you have to be an ascetic, and live like a monk or a hermit in a cave, and that's not at all. It means that you look at the life that you have and the busyness of the life that you have and how much time and energy you spend chasing things that have no certainty, that provide no satisfaction, that don't create any lasting happiness, and you think about the day that will never come again, how you really want to live it, and you put some time and energy in it, and what you wind up doing is simplifying your life. You simplify, you let go of a lot of things that are complicated and busy and create so much suffering. Ultimately, you start asking a different question. This has been my koan for the last 3 years now, since I transitioned from monastic life. What do I need to not do to be happy? Which I found a much more powerful question than what do I need to do? What do I need to let go of? How do I need to simplify? So much of what I'm doing to be happy creates a lot of unhappiness. And you will find, if you look, that it's the quest for happiness is the source of much unhappiness. And so renunciation is saying, stop playing that game. You don't have to play that game. Start putting your time and energy in something that's meaningful. And cultivate our higher potentials of mind, and the fact that you already have these qualities here, and they're obscured, and they're covered up, and they're cluttered, and we're so busy that we never even check. We're so busy chasing our desires and trying to, the analogy we use all the time is rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic so I can have a nice lounge as I'm going down. And then when the time comes, I've wasted my life. I've wasted my life. And so renunciation is an urgency and a strong desire to be liberated from being compulsively and habitually controlled by my mind. I mean, really, at a level, that's what it comes down to. Is our mind is constantly producing thoughts, worries, fears, concerns, desires, aversions and angers and resentments and things, and we don't have to go for the ride. And that's why we do a little meditation at the start. We start to tame our mind. We start to bring it where we'd like. And if we take some time and start reflecting on the nature of life as it is, with its drawbacks, we can create the desire to not want to live that way and cultivate renunciation in a path that can eliminate it. So again, it starts with where we're at. And where we're at, I will just say across the board, if you start to see the world more clearly, as it is, you're going to find a lot less suffering in your own life. As a matter of fact, the working hypothesis is that all of my mental afflictions and mental sufferings, mental and emotional sufferings, are dependent upon me misperceiving what's happening. And this path is about seeing things accurately. So let's just start paying attention. Hey, this meal was good. And enjoy it. But know it's not going to last. And let's not exaggerate, right? Best meal ever. Instead of, this is wonderful and I'm having a pleasurable experience with it. Which is more accurate. And enjoy it while it's there. And the people in your life, be engaged with them while they're there. Love them as they're there without needing to be attached to them. Be fully present for them. And have a desire that they be happy. And we can do that with other people. And so this is really a path about living in reality, about empowering ourselves to not have my mind drag me around and label and really objectify things that are going to make me happy. That can't. It just can't do it. And then put all my eggs in one basket because I know that this will make it happen. Something else can happen. And it just liberates you to start living in reality. So if we start paying attention, we can develop the renunciation to stop playing the game first. And ultimately the renunciation to liberate yourself from all of your mental afflictions. To be free of that. To purify our mind. The Tibetan word is about purifying the mind. It's purify Sangye, Sang, to purify this mind and to develop our highest qualities. So we're purifying the mind and developing these qualities so that we're really liberating ourselves from mental afflictions and cultivating, what we call sort of merit and wisdom. We've accumulated what's to be accumulated. We've gotten rid of what's obscuring us. And that's the path. 5 minutes. So as we enter into this, what I'm inviting you to do this week then is to just start paying attention to the game. What is it that I keep playing? Because you're going to lose. There's nothing out there. So, we got the 6 points that we want to start paying attention to. And see how caught up, because you will find that your mental afflictions of suffering, depression, anger, resentment, jealousy, etc. are always going to come from you expected things to be a certain way and they weren't. You wanted something to provide you a certain level of happiness and it didn't. And you just grasped onto things that aren't happening the way they are. So start paying attention to that game and go, how do I want to spend my life? How do I want to spend this day? And what are the things I can do today that are meaningful? What can I do to simplify? What can I not do to be happy? And start paying attention to that. And I did want to pause and just see if anyone had any questions. that have come up. And a couple of people, they'll come up afterwards because they don't want to ask questions in public. And some people would say just they have like some Buddhist question off topic, and that's fine. That's fine, because you don't always have time to ask Buddhist questions. So, yes.
So when you talked about the middle level, and you said that ultimately what that is making the choice not to even be reborn again, that I'm over with all of this. How does that not go into aversion to the world as it is? Because it seems to me if you're holding any aversion, like, oh, I don't want to come back to this, I don't want this anymore, then you've got a klesha, you've got something that's resistant, and so you're not clear.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And it's one that comes up commonly also in the reverse order, that you have a strong desire, right, an attachment to being liberated.
Right, exactly. Same.
And where this is one of the most common misunderstandings around Buddhism, is the idea that, if you read, well, desire is the core root of my suffering, and if I'm desiring enlightenment, it's counterproductive. Well, in fact, that's not the core root of our suffering. The core root of our suffering is misperception. It's believing me to be very separate and independent and self-existent, and you likewise, and seeing things in a very concrete way that they don't exist. Out of that misperception, I become very attached to certain things, desiring, and aversion to certain things. It's born out of misperception, but what this path teaches is that you can have a wise desire and a wise aversion. As a matter of fact, you need to develop those on very conventional levels to progress. So, for example, just on a conventional level, when you smell some food that smells bad, well, don't eat it, right? And you want something that's fresh, you eat that, it's healthier. So it's actually a desire that's born out of compassion and wisdom that can propel us on a path to enlightenment. It doesn't create the afflictions, but we need to be mindful, right? For example, meditation is a great example. A lot of people get very attached to a certain outcome in meditation. I'm going to meditate, I'm going to get this feeling, I'm going to attain that, and as soon as you set a goal like that, it's going to be really hard to succeed in meditation. We actually say abandon all hope and fear. and just follow the directions. But there needs to be a desire to follow the directions, that this is a path that we can do that. Likewise, cultivating an aversion to unhealthy mental states is a good thing. Not because the mental states in and of themselves, but because you know that they propel us back to suffering and conditioned existence. So it's born out of a wisdom of seeing things as they are.
So it seems like maybe it's more that equanimity that you talked about in the Day of Mindfulness, that it's like you see the affliction, you see the mental state, but you're not like pushing against it so much to create this like impact of aversion. It's like, I don't want to go there, this is a wholesome state of mind is what I choose, but I'm not like pushing that.
Right.
So hard.
And what we would say is the ultimate path is what we call skillful means. And what we mean by that is, I was talking to Laura, but we were listening to Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's an incredible scholar of Theravada Buddhism, different tradition, incredible. And he's noting that, this equanimity, this piece of accepting all that arises as it is a recipe for pain. We accept that things are arising as they are. That's true. But some things are beneficial and some things are not. And if my mental state's arising in compulsively desirous, unhealthy actions, you know what? Push back.
Right.
There's actually in Right Effort, it talks about when unwholesome mental states arise, well, here's the antidotes, apply the antidote. You actually do push back. You apply an antidote. And so one of the big common misperceptions in the whole, what we call this modern Western Buddhist movement, I'm not going to name it, but one of the big misperceptions is this idea of acceptance and equanimity and acceptance of all that arises without taking proper skillful action to apply remedies and to produce beneficial results. We actually, if something smells like, bad food, don't eat it. Likewise, unhealthy mental states, apply the antidotes. But don't beat yourself up for having them, right? Yeah, they arise, I have them. I'm not a bad person.
Right, but use your tools.
Yeah, I'm not a bad person. These things happen. They're human. And some days I'm going to be better at it than others. And some days I jump on the bandwagon and ride the desire. And that's human. And I did it. And don't beat myself up. Beating myself up is never a beneficial, healthy activity. All right? So it is a skillful thing. And what happens is people take this idea of mindfulness out of its context of an eightfold path and 3 higher trainings. That it's really a piece within a context, even within concentration, that includes right effort, right concentration. And so the idea of seeing things accurately, but being able to cultivate healthy mental states and to apply antidotes, to do something. Having a strong desire to remove suffering of all sentient beings is a beneficial desire that can lead to enlightenment. But if I get too attached to it, and I think get caught up on this, then I can create a lot of suffering. Yeah. So it is a middle path that they call. Yeah.
These 4, how did you categorize these 4 topics you went through? What was
There were 6. So we had the actual meditations on 6 unsatisfactory experiences. So, right. One was no certainty. No satisfaction was 2. Having to abandon your body repeatedly is 3. Having to take rebirth again and again, repeatedly. Having to change your status from exalted to humble repeatedly. And essentially being alone. The happy perky list. The message I just have to say, and I've said it again and again and again, is rather than the mental states that come from living in reality are actually empowering. And they lead to a lot of inner peace. Our real conflict is when our deluded states of mind play the game. Looks for certainty where you can't find it. Looks for satisfaction where you can't give it. Grasps onto things that are real that aren't. That creates the problems in life. Seeing things accurately releases them. Yep.
One quick last one. Can you give us a specific example on how to practice this throughout the week? Let's say I wake up in the morning and I really want my oatmeal.
Yeah. So you're bringing your mind to satisfaction, right? Desire satisfaction. So I really want my oatmeal. Well, then we would actually, the idea is that you'd sit and meditate and take a look at, has my oatmeal ever thoroughly satisfied me? Are there other things that I could eat that could be just as satisfying? Is there any time, is this oatmeal creating suffering in my life or not suffering in my life? Why would I eat oatmeal? What is the nourishment? So the idea is to really look at the sense pleasures and see, how is my mind grasping on this oatmeal, and how is this oatmeal going to be any more beneficial than some other meal? And notice, has it ever satisfied, or has it created more desire? And could I be just as happy with something else? Or could I be happy just allowing a meal to not be eaten That's a real interesting meditation. Is especially if it's attachment around food and hunger, is to notice that your hunger can come and go. I was a monk and I didn't eat after midday, so I got a lot of chances to observe that. And I noticed that would come and go, and I'd have a glass of water, and I'd wind up at an hour later. I'm not thinking about oatmeal. So with this though, what the idea specifically is to take some time and really meditate on no certainty, and call to mind how many things in your life have not been certain, and how many things change. And then one day take a meditation on satisfaction. Watch my desire. Watch it come, watch it go. Notice it's temporary. Notice its attachment to an outcome, and how many times I've gotten the outcome, but it didn't satisfy me. And notice how when I do get my oatmeal, what do I want? I want some more oatmeal. And just notice this unsatisfactoriness. So you analytically piece it out, and then call to mind. So each one you would go into an analytical meditation. You'd bring it to mind, and you'd call to mind the way that we're constantly searching for pleasure. We're constantly unsatisfied, and just keep doing it, and you'll start recognizing that. But in the moment, it's really nice, because I notice when I get these hunger pangs, how much of my hunger is just habit or boredom. You'd be amazed how much that happens as humans. I just had 3 chunks of licorice before I came over. Black licorice, Australian. Good stuff from Jerry Joe's. Didn't provide lasting happiness. But I'll tell you what, I wasn't hungry. I'm eating it, and I notice, I'm just eating it because it's there. And so if we start meditating, we'll start noticing our attachment to something, and then attack it. Attack it. Will it provide me that lasting happiness or not? Has it before? Does it last? Are there other things? So that's the idea of each of these topics, is to go through these points of it and see if you find if you can find something that satisfies you. See if you can find that.
Can't you be satisfied if you're not attached to that lasting?
Check it out. What you will cultivate, and His Holiness really talks about cultivating a mind of satisfied, a content mind, a satisfied mind. And as you learn to do these meditations and you learn to see things more accurately, your mind's going to be less grasping, and it's going to be more content in general. And the beauty about cultivating a mind that is more content, more at peace, more satisfied, less grasping, is you're going to reduce a lot of mental afflictions. So, for example, I listened to a talk by him. He said that anger is dependent upon being dissatisfied. Right? I mean, it just makes sense. You're not going to be angry if you're satisfied. Right? So imagine cultivating a sense of satisfaction, a sense of calm, and a sense of well-being. And you're not going to get caught up in that. So this is where you would get to through these, as you would start to notice, wow, I'm really desirous of this. Wow, I've noticed that. Wow, I'm attached to this. And, that doesn't quite last. So you also notice that you're okay anyway. And the loss of whatever this is created the opportunity of something new. But when I only had this, that's all I knew. And now there's an opportunity for something new. So you start noticing. Then you're going to be more content, more satisfied. But that comes with time, right? It comes with observation. And here, there's a very primary thing to cultivate a renunciation to being trapped by karma and klesha and mental afflictions. It's really renouncing my mind that's dragging me around, the delusional state of mind based in misperception. All right. Okay, we went a little bit over, but good questions. The one thing I did not mention at the start was Next Wednesday, at the end of the Dharma talk, we'll have another volunteer meeting for the visit, for the monks' visit. So I know we've been trying to do this on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but we thought we're here. It's easier to have the meeting, and so next Wednesday after the Dharma talk, we'll have a meeting for organizing the monks' visit. So those of you that are interested, and those of you that have already participated, next Wednesday after me. All right, so let's do a little dedication. We accumulated a lot of merit and wisdom here, participating in a path that can lead to no more suffering for the benefit of all beings. So let's dedicate this virtue and wisdom for all beings. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom we have accumulated both here today and throughout our lives for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to accumulate our own path to enlightenment so that we can free all beings from suffering. Well, thank you all so much. It's a joy, as always, to be able to share in the Dharma, and hope it was beneficial. And all of you online, thank you so much for attending, and hope to see you soon. Next Wednesday we'll be here, and then May 30th, and then June 2nd. Special activities. All right, be well and try to stay out of trouble.